Hauka, Alito. My name is William. I am a social work intern here I go to SDSU, and I'm Choctaw Tribal member.
Hi everyone, my name is Fer. You can also pronounce it as Fair, either way is fine with me. I pronounce it they, them. I'm a counseling intern here at SCARE, and I'm currently in school for, I'm at Community-Based Block Program, or CBB, at San Diego State.
Hi, I'm Jenna Evans, and I'm in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program at the University of San Diego, and I am a counselor here at SCARE.
Hi, my name is Kurt. I'm a counselor here at SCARE as well. I also go to University of San Diego in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program.
Welcome to the Winter Workshop. Hello, William again. Okay, so I just want to go through the agenda that we're going to cover for this workshop. I'm going to do some intentional connections with what the holidays mean to us. We're going to do a writing exercise, talk about finding a medicine. We're going to do some experiential mindfulness tools. And then after that, Kurt is going to talk about navigating stress during the holidays. Fad is going to talk about assessing our values, and Jenna is going to talk about expectations and boundaries in action. So I want to go ahead and start with intentional connection and what the holidays mean to us individually. So first of all, it's good for us to identify what the personal significance of the holidays mean to us. I know for me that there's this societal significance of what the holidays mean, and a big part of that we see that's everywhere is buy stuff and purchase stuff and consume stuff. And if that's what the holidays mean to you, that's fantastic. And if it's not what the holidays mean to you, that's fantastic too. The reason that I'm bringing it up is because the holidays to me are more in alignment with seeing where I'm at in the world and in my life, and looking at what I've done, what I'm doing right now, and what I'm going to do moving forward. It's kind of like taking stock of the last year and seeing what I've accomplished, going ahead and looking at my big goals and seeing where I'm at in those, and seeing how far I've come along and then moving forward. It's a time of the cycle, these cycles of life, of birth, going through life, and then ending. It's another year that's ending and another year that's beginning. And so inside of that ending, recognizing that, being present for that, seeing how that feels, and then making space in my life, in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit for a new. So yeah, that's kind of also within that the state of my relationships. Sometimes whenever we lose someone during the year, especially in the society that we live in, we don't have time to go ahead and take a look at that, whether it's just a lost relationship or we lose somebody leaves this earth. And then in the holiday season, we have time to remember that, and we're surrounded by other people, and we can share in that. And we can remember our people that we've lost before, not just this last year too. And then family traditions and significance. So like I said, time to gather. We get time off. A lot of people get vacations. There's holiday meals, times that families get to spend together. That's usually something that happens. Ancestral significance, New Year's. So for me, I'm Choctaw, from the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma, and our ancestral lands. We're in Mississippi, and the new year for us started during the first frost. So the first frost of the year, which was usually late October, early November, that was the new year. And so that's how we marked time, that's how we marked passing of time. So if it was 5 years ago, we would say it's 5 times since the grass has died, and that means 5 years ago. And then for the first month was a month of cooking. So whenever you're agriculture and you have stuff and the ground frost, everything comes up. and then everything comes up and it's going to be the winter, and then you cook stuff to preserve it. And so that is like cooking, everybody's inside, it's getting colder, it's time people are together, spending more time together, eating food, having good times. That is how my grandma painted my ancestors going through the holidays for me. And that's what it was like for us too. We spent time together, we got together as family, we had meals, we laughed. I have good memories from that. And then the religious and spiritual, I kind of touched on it already, ending and beginnings, life and death, cycle of life that we see in nature. So that cycle of life that we also see represented in the medicine wheel is the cycle that is in nature, like for everything. It's all around us. There's a beginning, there's life, there's an end. And then sometimes it's thought that like in modern day conception that like that's it, and it's really not. It's a circle, it just keeps going. And that's what happens in our lives. There's seasons of our lives. There's times in our lives we might be involved in something. Like let's just take high school for example. If we went to high school, if we go to high school, there's going to be a start and there's going to be the going through it, and then there's going to be the end of it. And then that's not the end. There's going to be other things going on in our life. So let's just take a minute. If you guys need to pause it, and what do the holidays mean for you? Is it about getting stuff and giving people presents? If it is, that's great. Is it about connecting with yourself? Is it about connecting with your loved ones? In which ways? How does your culture play into that? How does the culture of society play into that? How does it play into in ways that you like and want? How does it play into it in ways that you don't like and you don't want? Right now I'm gonna go ahead and like invite us all to do a writing exercise. So get out a piece of paper, a pencil, whatever you want to do, write or draw something that symbolizes what this time of year means to us. So some things that it means for me is like community, refreshing, grounding myself in like who I am and what I am, and remembering that like I'm not just like this form of like physicality, like I'm something that's greater than that, and this is a spiritual experience, and that's important for me to know and remember and to keep in mind like as I travel this journey. And take some moments and take some days and take some times to get back to that and share that with the people that I love and share what that journey's like for me. It's always a good conversation for me to have whenever I just ask people like, how is God working in your life? I know that some people can call God God, or there can be other names for it too, but just how is the Spirit working in your life? How is the energy of what is and what makes this whole thing spin? How is that working for you? And how are you engaging it? And how are you not engaging it? Is there fear? Is there trepidation? Are you holding back? Are there things that possibly you might need to be doing? Good questions to ask, good things to talk about. Thinking about the specific time coming up, what would you like it to be? What do we hope to experience mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? So going back to that medicine wheel. Emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. What do you want this to be like? Go ahead and take some time and write that out. Like I said, for me, pause the video. And then how do we want to show for others? This is a good time for us to write a note of someone that we wish, what would we want someone else to experience for the holidays? What you wish for them to experience for the holidays. Like, if you are having trouble with that, what do you want the holidays to be like? Like, what do you want the holidays to be like for you? And then go ahead and like turn that to like, I want the holidays to be like this for other people. So in this life and in this world, we can want the world to be a specific way and do nothing about it, or we can decide how we want the world to be and be that for ourselves and other people. And so I want to discuss how we want to show up for ourselves for this holiday season. And like how we can find our medicine. You know, like what do we got going on? Like, is it stressful this time? Is it not stressful? Is it exciting? But still we need to like balance things out. So even whenever we get excited and we spend time with people and it's like nourishing to us, sometimes we do get excited and do too much, and then we'll get burned out from that too. So we need to like make sure that we rest. And yeah, just go ahead and like take some time to think about that and how you want to show up for yourself, and like just be mindful of like that we're finding our medicine. That's like what we're doing. We're going through these cycles, and we're recognizing where we're at in the cycles, and we're recognizing that we're working towards balancing ourselves out, and there's ways that in which we can do that through things here in the physical world, and then also spiritually as well. And then how do I want others to show up for me? So, like I said before, this is just identifying like how I want life and this holiday season to be for me. I want people to be loving. I want people to be kind, giving, not so much of stuff, but their time and their energy, and open-minded. Whether people do that and give that to me is outside of my control, and I can't control it. So if I get caught up in what other people do, and if they show up for me or if they don't, sometimes that can hurt me. And since I can't control that, then I ask myself, what can I control? Oh, I can control if I show up for other people in a loving, kind, giving, and open-minded way. And so if I focus on that because I can control it, all of a sudden the only one that can let me down is me. And I'm not relying on others to like give me what I need. Now I'm like identifying like what my values are, and it's up to me to like stay true to them and fulfill myself for this holiday season. Because that's what I can do. I can make this loving, I can be loving, kind, giving, open-minded, make this a good holiday season for other people. So yeah, that's within my control. And then so sometimes that becomes overwhelming, and we do need to take care of ourselves. So I want to give you some mindfulness tools and techniques. There's two different ways to be mindful. We can escape and we can go away from things because they're too much and we need some time. Or we can like draw in and be close and connect even more. And so there's box breathing, is to connect with yourself physically and gain control of like your physical body, which is like the most even basic way. Because if we're talking about like, oh, I want to like be a good person and do these things, that means like we have to control ourselves like physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and like that gets complicated, and it's definitely doable. But I'm gonna go to like the most basic thing we can control. I can control the way that I breathe, right? I can hold my breath, I can not hold my breath. And so we're gonna do that experiential thing right now. After I explain these, there's a drawing closer. One thing that I like to do, I already mentioned it, is talk about the present moment. Stay focused on the here and now. So if I'm hanging out with somebody and we're doing something, I'm talking about like what we're actually doing right now, in the moment, focusing on that, not talking about the past, not talking about the future, but like right now, being with somebody. And then another one for either escaping or drawing closer, which has some cultural significance for me, and I hope you too, is going outside in nature. You can go outside just to get a break, take a breath of fresh air, and just be by yourself, or you can spend time with somebody in nature while you're having that conversation. Oh, look at what's going on. Oh, look at the sun, how it's like shining off of the lake. Like, look at these leaves. Like, look at being and like communing and like spending time and connecting with nature with somebody else is a beautiful thing. So right now I'm gonna go through this mindfulness techniques, and it's called box breathing. You can do this anytime you want, really easy, and it's really powerful too. So again, recognizing the only thing I can control is myself. And then it's just like a pattern of breathing. So we're gonna breathe all of our air out, and then breathe in for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Breathe all your air out for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. And breathe in. 2, 3, 4. And you can continue to do this. You can do it to your own counting. Some people don't like to count in their head, and you can do it physically. So you can just like tap 4, and you get the rhythm of it. Like you think like, oh, like I'll lose track, but you'll get the rhythm. You can listen to music, and you can do it to the beat of music. You can do it like without counting. Just do it kind of freestyle. That's kind of cool sometimes too. And then you can change up the count. So you like breathe in for 4, breathe out for 2. There's like different kinds, but the most common way to teach it is 4 because it's the easiest. So yeah, I just want to invite you to do that next time that you're feeling like you can't control what's going on and your heart is starting to race and your thoughts are starting to get crazy and you feel like you need to go home, you feel like you need to get grounded. That's like where the home is. It's with inside of us, and we can control ourselves. And whenever we practice that too, it strengthens that, us controlling ourselves. And yeah, that has a bunch to do with like staying true to our values. It's like, I want to be this person, and then there's all these distractions in the world. And it's hard for me to be the person that I want to be sometimes because all these things happen. And if we work on like controlling ourselves and staying true to ourselves, we can stay true to our values through all of that stuff. And so that is mine, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it to the next section that we're going to be doing, which is reducing and managing stress during the holidays.
Hello everyone, thank you all for joining me. Thank you guys at home or wherever you are. My name is Kurt, I'm one of the counseling interns here at SCARE, and my section is going to be talking about reducing and managing stress during the holidays. Sometimes the holidays can be extra stressful. There's a lot of different factors at play, family getting together. So we're basically going to start with a few discussion questions. So kind of looking at, okay, what is stress? Where does it come from? What is involved? What does it look like? I have some questions here. You can pick 1, you can pick 5, but just kind of pick a couple questions and discuss them a bit, and then I'll be here listening in, pitching in. Is there anyone that stands out to either of you at the start?
Sources of stress during the holiday time. And so for me, I know sometimes there's a lot of pressure to buy gifts for everyone, and that can be very stressful for me. I feel like in my family pocket, meaning just me and my children, that we have a good grasp of it, but then when you open it up to other family members, it gets stressful. And then finances, so that's stressful to me. So it looks like stressing like you're not gonna have enough.
I can definitely relate to that. And I was brought up with my 2 brothers, and so one of the gifts that we have given each other is that we don't buy each other gifts.
Okay.
And that's been really helpful.
Yes.
For like birthdays and stuff too. So we have children, and so we do that, but like just between me and my brothers, we do that. And so
Yeah.
we actually appreciate that, which is not normal, but
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds, that's that pressure, of an expectation that, you have to kind of get gifts for everyone, or that has to be something that's mandatory, not just outside of it sounds like your immediate family, but also like once you get outside of that, it's like a bit more pressure. And then you kind of have like a creative solution. It's like, all right, the gift is no gift, because there is some of that pressure that, and escaping that.
But definitely still deal with the same thing, because everybody expects gifts for the holidays. And it's like, okay, like how are we gonna finance this situation?
And Christmas is different for different families. Some people it's centered around presents, and then some people it's just like being together.
Yeah.
And making, like for me, it's like making memories, like baking cookies or, having things like that. And then some people it's like, no, I want gifts with a monetary value,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sometimes it's like the experience is kind of like achieving the same goal of a gift for you whereas like, other people might want the actual physical
That's-
thing.
yeah.
I see, yeah, so it's like kind of conflicting a little bit.
Conflicting values, because like I said, I think with me and my children, we have it under control and we know what our values are.
Mhm.
But then like if you, like having a girlfriend that like, oh no, we have to get my mom a gift, or, for my boys that, dating, or people date, like when you start dating people and bringing additional people into your
Mhm.
family, then it looks different.
Yeah. Gotcha, yeah, no, thank you. I think we have time for maybe like, to go over one more right now. Obviously, at home you can pause the video, take time to, talk about whichever ones you want. You can write your thoughts down on a piece of paper. But for us, let's maybe pick one more that we want to talk about.
I want to go ahead and just go straight to it, and it's like, how do we cope, and then what happens when stress exceeds my capacity to cope. It's good for me to know when it's time to just like, okay, it's time for William. I'm done. I don't have anything left in the tank, and what that looks like for me before it gets to that point. And so it's like, oh, I need to do some things. I need to like find my medicine. I need to like do what I do to cope. I need to like go outside, exercise. I need to maybe separate from whoever I'm engaged with and like go engage with somebody else who's gonna like fill me up instead of drain me. And yeah, so that's kind of what I do. Listening to music whenever I'm to that point where it's like, okay, gotta get away. It's exercise and listening to music and be in nature for me.
I think how I cope with stress, holiday time is good, because I'm a stress eater, so it's not necessarily the healthiest, but so sometimes it can look like that, like stressing out and then eating, but then a lot of times I'll tell somebody like, okay, this is stressing me out.
Yeah.
That I think that I've gotten pretty good at being like, this is stressing me out. And then one of the questions is like, what does your stress look like? And because I don't want my stress to look like me yelling or, going off, because I know that. So then I'll like, okay, this is stressing me out. I need to, like you said, have some quiet time,
Yeah.
or to be like, okay, that's not my get down, or it doesn't, like sometimes like it doesn't matter to me that much to let it make me stress too much.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there's those coping mechanisms that are available to us. There's also looking at, sounds like, almost getting to the start of it, where like that stress might start. So setting that boundary, and like also knowing, okay, before I start to express stress in ways that may not be, as conducive or healthy, letting them know, okay, this is where my stress is starting to get. And so like that awareness element is starting to come into place. I know, William, you were saying you were starting to notice, okay, now I need to time out for William,
Yeah.
like, and take a step back. And so having that awareness sounds like it's also an important aspect. All right, well, thank you. We're gonna start moving on. So, what is stress? I know, stress, everyone has a different definition, everyone has a different experience. It's one of those words that's kind of like, how do I describe stress without using the word stress? But, from a dictionary, biological standpoint, stress is considered a natural human response when you're experiencing difficult moments and circumstances. It's often associated with feelings of tension, strain, discomfort, feeling overwhelmed. It prompts us, kind of like a biological reactant, to address challenges and threats in our lives. We usually get stressed out by things that are, kind of urgent, or things that we feel like we need to act on. And so that's why stress can sometimes be useful in manageable amounts, but when it gets too much, that's when you start to, experience a burnout. You recognize, okay, I don't have anything left in the tank, and so kind of finding that range can be really helpful. And it's often experienced, mentally through your mental thoughts, but also through your body. Stress can take a toll on your physicality and, your how you're feeling. Your stress levels can, really make you tired and fatigued, or you might feel like nauseous, dizzy. We'll get into some of those symptoms later on and those impacts. Before we do that, looking at the types of stress. So, it doesn't need to be so organized, but there are different kinds of stress to kind of help, picture in your head. There's acute, which is like, short times or moments. This is the most common. It's like, okay, I have a paper due on Friday, and it's like Wednesday, and I feel like I need to do some more stuff, and it's kind of stressful. That's usually acute stress. Episodic is like short to medium. It's when the acute stress is kind of more frequent and routine. And at that time, you know, you might be, for example, like a nurse who is, you know, consistently having to, you know, have very intense weeks where, you know, they're working on, you know, attending to a lot of things. Chronic, now this is where it starts to get a bit more consistently present for lengthy periods of time. It feels like it's never ending. You know, some examples of this might be if you were in a relationship that is having, you know, you're having a lot of difficulties with your partner, you know, financial struggles with work, things like that. And I would say, like, you know, the one big takeaway to remember throughout this presentation is that everyone does experience stress to some degree. However, it manifests differently in everyone, and, you know, different levels of stress impact us all differently. So these are just some symptoms. You know, they're not all, I guess, common or as routine. But for example, if you're looking at kind of like behavioral, you know, you might start noticing, okay, like, you know, you're grinding your teeth. I know when I'm stressed, I start to clench my teeth a bit more, and I'm like, oh no, I'm like grinding my teeth at night or something. Social withdrawal is also another thing, disrupted sleep, you know, irritability, anger, loss of motivation, difficulty concentrating, you know, mood instability. And, you know, I feel like when I'm looking through this, I see some patterns, but I'm curious if you guys see any, you know, patterns that you're noticing or anything like interesting that stands out about this list.
The sleep, I don't know why the sleep does to me, like, stands out to me. And the irritability.
The sleep and the irritability.
Hyper focused isn't on there, I don't think, but yeah, that's like, it goes along with like loss of sleep.
Okay.
It's like for me, it's like if I'm stressed and I'm anxious, instead of like my body kind of turning down, it just like ramps up and goes towards like, okay, let's be super alert and make sure you don't get any sleep, because somehow that will make it better, but it doesn't. But yeah, insomnia for sure.
Gotcha, it's almost like your body kicks it into overdrive
Mhm.
to make up for things
Yeah.
and whatnot. And, you know, you seem to have, like, you know, do you have like troubles with sleep sometimes where
Yeah,
it's like,
when I'm
okay, yeah.
stressed out, yeah, I have a hard time sleeping, like, coming down, like I said, I'm like overthinking.
Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of the ways that, you know, stress, it kind of disrupts your abilities to regulate and to kind of keep yourself going and maintain, because there is literally an extra stress being placed on you, and so your body, your nervous system has to take that load, whatnot, so. Alright, so moving on. So, exploring stressors. This is definitely an oversimplification of, you know, our stressors and kind of understanding where they come from. But, you know, sometimes everything in broad categories can be helpful, at least for me. So we have stress up at the top, and I like to think of, you know, certain stresses as being external, certain as being internal. And so external, I have the categories obligations and relationships. Obligations, these might look like, you know, financial and social. You have a lot of bills to pay. You have to attend work, you know, so you can provide for your family and, you know, make the money that you need. You know, maybe being a parent, you know, you also have those like social obligations as well. And of course, going into relationships, they kind of go hand in hand with those social obligations. But if you're a parent, you know, or if you have, you know, a significant other and you're working on that relationship, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff that is required of you to, you know, be a part of that and to invest in that. And so sometimes these things are often involving, you know, other people, other systems, you know, the system that we're in, and the external forces that are around us that are not necessarily within our locus of control, or, you know, within whatever we can control, whatever is in our power. Then on the other side, you know, stressors, looking at kind of the internal aspects. And so one might be personal narrative. And so oftentimes, or pretty much at all times, we are telling some form of a story to ourselves. And sometimes that story has an overarching theme, like maybe, you know, I need to, or maybe it's like an overarching theme of, you know, inadequacy, for example. You know, these stories can be positive as well, but if you are, you know, maybe feeling stressed out, feeling like you're not doing enough, those little things that you are telling yourself, like, okay, if I don't, you know, put on a perfect dinner or something for this Christmas, then I'm inadequate, I failed, and this is, you know, that's what it is. Maybe, you know, you've internalized stuff you've heard from other people, and you feel like, okay, you know, they're right. If I don't show up, you know, to this holiday gathering, I'm not really a member of the family or something like that. And so it's, it's sometimes the stories we're telling ourselves can be unhelpful thoughts, can add to our own stress, and trying to remember that, okay, maybe there's a different perspective we can look at it from can be helpful. And then there's also, habits and history. So personal history, what have our habits been? What's our routine? Sometimes these stressors that we do come from behaviors that we're not exactly able to change yet, that we may want to, and they inherently stress ourselves out further. And so, in that essence, trying to at least gain awareness and that first step of acknowledging and kind of assessing, where are we with this? What behaviors are impacting me? What things am I telling myself? Can really give you insight on how things are infecting you, and how things that are internally going on within you can be added to your stress. So, common stressors, not a comprehensive list. We have other blank down here. But some of the most common stressors are, financial and social obligations, death of a loved one, job loss or problems at work, traumatic events, emotional well-being struggles. Sometimes that goes hand in hand with mental health issues, relationship issues, and also extremely high expectations and goals. And then real quick, do either of you have, something that you can think of that might fit in this other, or something that's just specific for you?
All of them.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah, just like financial obligations sometimes get a lot, especially living here in San Diego. But yeah, and then sometimes like loss of a loved one, that's happened to me like a few times. Yeah.
Loss of a loved one. The holiday time is special, but then also sometimes it reminds you of who's not here, and so that can be difficult to manage sometimes.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. And so it's not an other, but it's something that is very real.
Yeah, feeling that absence is almost highlighted a little bit more during the holidays. Yeah.
I can relate to the last one, and then throwing it back to the last slide that said like your internal self-talk, like how you talk to yourself, and like my goals and my expectations for myself. Like sometimes I just tell myself that it's like more serious, like I'm gonna do it anyways, but like I'm just like this narrative that I have sometimes is like, you need to do this like the best that it's ever been done in the history of the universe. And it's like, calm down, dude, like it's not that serious, like you're gonna do it how you're gonna do it anyways. And I find that like whenever I'm softer and more gentler to myself and like more kind and loving and like there's a little bit more space and it's not so serious like that, not only do I perform better, but then also like it reduces my stress and it helps me out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of gaining that perspective and giving yourself a little bit of room, something can be really helpful. My family's Korean, and there's I don't know if it's from Korean culture, but there's a saying that like the sun can get someone to the sun can get someone to take off their jacket by using warmth and kindness rather than the wind or a storm who keeps trying to blow the jacket off of you. And so kind of in that sense, if you, give yourself a bit more compassionate space, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll come out, like I'll do this, I have a little bit more room and a little bit more forgiveness. It's not like, oh, if I fall, it's the end of the world. So again, another chart. So the variable process of stress, kind of going from like a basic standpoint, we have at the very bottom our stressor. This is the initial event or circumstance that occurs. It's usually challenging or straining. You feel some sense of urgency that you need to act, and that's where that stress comes from. Oftentimes, a lot of stresses are out of our control. So, for example, in the holiday season, you need to maybe reach out to that one relative you have a hard time connecting with, and that's your stressor. It's like, okay, what's going to happen, and then so that's your stressor that kind of ignites the stress. And then so now that stressor gets put into kind of the filter or processing stage. This is where kind of that self-talk, that narrative that we tell ourselves, and our past experiences, they all kind of are the criteria on which this stressor gets filtered through. And it's like, okay, how much is this going to stress me out? How is this going to stress me out? For example, I have to reach out to that relative that I don't really like talking to, or we're kind of estranged. And it's like, okay, in my head, I might be telling myself I need to do this because I'm kind of running the celebrations this year, and like I need to do this perfectly or else it's not going to go well, or maybe they'll hate me even more and I'll mess things up. And so there's no right or wrong answer, but kind of using that awareness to understand, okay, why is it stressing me out in the way that it is? What's going on with that can be helpful to notice. And also in this filtering process, you can kind of start to implement some of those coping strategies into it. And then of course there's the ultimate effect, the end result of personally experiencing and processing the stressor. Everyone experiences it to a different degree, and so you kind of look at yourself, okay, using that same example, if I do have to reach out to someone that I don't want to reach out to, I am now feeling really stressed, I don't want to call anybody anymore, and I don't want to help with the dinner or help with invitations or whatnot. And so that you're kind of looking at that ultimate effect. And at the very point, I just brought it down here, the fourth stage would normally be coping and dealing with the stress. This is where ideally you are working to kind of work through it and kind of soothe yourself and work through those difficulties and stress. And this is usually one of the parts of the process that you have more control in how you respond and how you can take action. So stress management tips and techniques. We have this little 5-petal flower over here. So self-compassion, rest, social connection, emotional regulation, and consistency. And so a little bit about that, being patient and compassionate towards ourselves. Again, if we can't get everything done perfectly, it's not the end of the world. You still did a lot, having that positive self-talk towards you. Resting when able to. I know it's very easy to say take a break, but sometimes it's hard to take a break. And if you really are, the turkey needs to be like in the oven and everything needs to be ready by the time people get here, you may not feel like you can take a break. And so that's where it becomes important to really, find, okay, when can I actually rest? Or maybe find different ways to rest. Rest doesn't necessarily just mean laying down or, not doing anything, but that could be, talking to someone while you, maybe take care of something else. Also, utilizing social support and giving attention and engaging in the fulfilling, supportive relationships. I know sometimes, during the holiday seasons, it's that social interaction that's actually the stressor sometimes. And so it's important to, recognize that you can't always be connecting with those people, but trying to reach out and be in those supportive, fulfilling relationships and interactions can be really helpful. Also, engaging in mindfulness. So the whole, concept of emotional regulation is really about trying to help you kind of process and regulate or organize all the stimulus. And sometimes that mindfulness can be really helpful with that, and finding a way to release stress in a cathartic way is really helpful. And also consistently doing things, that consistency, whether it's your exercise, therapy, social connection, habits, things that keep you going well, things that are helpful, it's important to do them consistently as well. All right, so there's the flower. I'll call it the flower of 5, if you can remember the concepts for helping you out during stress management. Specific techniques for actually managing stress. So there's kind of the categories that I put of immediate and long term. So immediate, they're more coping mechanisms, and so that can be like small, short activities, like listening to music or going for a walk. A mindfulness meditation, something along the lines of breathing, focusing on the body, kind of tuning in, and having a very objective or non-judgmental, at least, approach to your thoughts and your experience. At the core of it, mindfulness is just having that kind of non-judgmental approach to your experience. The grounding exercise, I'm not sure if you've heard of this before from people, but there's the 5 senses and the 5 things. Okay, start off with 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, etc. It's a grounding activity to kind of bring you back into the present. Also, utilizing available resources, whether that is to a therapist, whether that is calling a friend, whether that is maybe going to social media and communicating in groups with other people. And this one's a bit more general, but also kind of focusing on controlling what we can. So sometimes in the moment when we are really stressed and starting to get flustered, it's recognizing, okay, what can I do right now that I am in control of? And sometimes doing that in and of itself helps relieve the stress, because you are alleviating the sensation that you don't have control of the situation. And so sometimes even just doing something that's within your control can kind of ground you a bit, bring you back up, and you can start to make things more manageable. In terms of long term, there's that sustaining protective element, and so self-care and maintaining supportive care. So that's doing to the best of your abilities: diet, exercise, getting enough sleep, sleep hygiene, and having alone time if necessary. And self-care looks different for everyone. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more in the next slide. Gratitude. Practicing gratitude can be a really simple task, and it can kind of be hard to grasp. How does gratitude really help? Gratitude really kind of helps your brain get into that habit or that pattern of seeing things to be grateful for. And it's kind of a similar concept to focusing on what we can control. There are things we can control and things we can't. There are things that we are grateful for, and there are things that we feel like could be better. And so there doesn't have to be it's either bad or not. There are things you can be grateful for and things you're not. But practicing gratitude, even for 5 minutes a week, can make a difference versus let alone 5 minutes a day. Engaging in self-reflection and self-compassion. This is kind of more of a general thing. It's kind of like you're checking up on yourself. You're like, okay, last holiday season I was really stressed out about the meal, and I feel like the meal really stressed me out, and it kind of kept me from engaging more so with my family. And maybe this year you're like, okay, I feel like I've been kind of doing better with that, and I feel like I will be able to interact with my family just fine. And then let's say you can't. Let's say you still have a hard time doing that at dinner. That's where that self-compassion comes in. It's like, I'm doing the best I can. I've tried. The important thing is we are all together. Like I'm alive. We have food. Regardless of even if you don't have food, it's that self-compassion. It's being okay, because the key to longevity is not getting down too hard on yourself to the point where you stop, or to the point where you feel burnt out. And so sometimes, the way we can train ourselves is by being down on ourselves. That's where that whole narrative thing comes in, and so forth. So these are the key themes for navigating stress. Wherever there's kind of like a diamond, if you can just ingrain that and kind of remember those themes, and just go where your gut or your heart follows, in actually making that a reality. So for example, self-compassion, emotional regulation, self-care, social connection. The example for self-compassion: being kind and patient with yourselves, being your own supporter, validating your experience, whatever that may be. And how would you show compassion to a friend or a loved one who's experiencing stress? If you are really feeling stressed, how would you validate yourself? Would you say, okay, it was really hard. This is a lot for anybody to do. It is difficult, and it's just how it is. In terms of emotional regulation, identifying, acknowledging stress and its effects, kind of putting a label to it takes some of its power away and kind of helps alleviate and reduce those effects. Allowing yourself to feel those emotions and sensations without fighting them the best you can, without kind of resisting, and that's where that mindfulness element comes into play. And then also finding ways to process your experiences, get some perspective, challenge some stories that you might be telling yourself. Self-care. Learning how stress personally affects you and what that looks like. So if you can't really, it's harder to take care of yourself if you're not really sure, what part of yourself you need to take care of, how you want to take care of that. Consciously engaging in rejuvenating activities, taking time for yourself when necessary. Self-care looks different for everyone. And so all of it is about rejuvenating yourself and preparing yourself so that you can go forward and do those things that you need to do and love to do. In terms of social connection, so again, engaging in those fulfilling interactions and supportive relationships, utilizing available forms of support, like from the community and people. That can be me going to my local Boys and Girls Club to play basketball. People could be going to a powwow that you've been meaning to go to. It could be just meeting up with family before the actual gathering, and consciously seeking that positive social interaction is an important element as well. It can be really hard when you're stressed and you're trying to get through it, and you feel like you're feel like doing it. Kind of making that leap to go out and do that can be really helpful. Alright, so this kind of brings us to the end of the session. What we do have though to finish off is an activity. It's called the cup analogy. And so think of your well-being kind of like this cup, or this big water bottle. And so there's water in here, when our water drops below a certain level, because there are things that drain our cup and fill our cup, but when we have too many things that are draining us and our water drops below a certain level, for me, for example, that's when I kind of start to hit like, okay, I'm feeling more apathetic, depressed, anxious, irritable, burned out. I don't have anything left in the tank, like literally. And so usually when we're doing well, we kind of have a range, you know, it's not just one area, but we have a range where we're like, you know, fluctuate, but there's a certain point where the filling things and the draining things are kind of in a sort of an equilibrium. And so for example, when I say things that fill our cup, that's things that rejuvenate us, that kind of, you know, bring us back and give us energy again. And so for me, that might be going to the ocean. Things that drain, you know, I might be, you know, compounded essay assignments that I have to turn in, or, you know, a relationship I'm having that's having difficulties that I need to continuously talk through and work through them and be patient. And so there's the protective and supportive factors as well that I like to call lids, and that's kind of like the, you know, that keeps the water inside, and even when, you know, the cup's shaking around. You might have some, you know, active exercise, you might be going to therapy on a routine basis and things like that. And the analogies can just be helpful for conceptualizing, you know, what factors influence our overall well-being and, you know, how they impact us. So, this is the activity, and we'll be right back.
Because I want to thank you, Kurt, for the amazing conversation you had with us about stress. One thing that I would like to bring as we are thinking about stress and kind of like expectations for the holidays, what we want those to look like, will be a conversation about values. And so values are things in our lives that help us and drive us and kind of make sense about what are the things that we want to be prioritizing in our lives. And so when we are going into the holiday season, we're going into spending time with family, friends, community, it's going to be important to think about like what's important to us, what's important to our communities. And so I would love to offer 2 worksheets for us in order to like help guide us in thinking about that. So the first question that I had is how knowing and prioritizing our own values can enhance our experience with our family and community. So again, we are individuals, but as individuals we make up our community, and so it's going to be important to think about what do I as an individual want to think about, what do I want to prioritize in my holidays, and so that will take us to our first worksheet. So as you can see, we have a list of different values here. This is of course not all inclusive, so there's a few little extra spaces here at the bottom where if you don't see a value of yours represented in this worksheet, feel free to add that in. And what we're going to do is just take a moment to rate some of these. Of course, we have lots of different values, but it's going to be important for us to know when we are going into the holiday times, when we're going into family, friend, community spaces, what is it that we're bringing with us? So I'm going to ask you to take a moment and just think about like what kind of mindset, what feels important for you when you're going into this space. So being very specific about this, because for example, like when I'm at work, I know I'm not prioritizing the same values as if when I'm with family, for example. Maybe if I'm at work, I'm thinking about success and knowledge more, but when I'm with family, I'm prioritizing love and I'm prioritizing calmness a little bit more. So, so for our participants that are joining us, take a moment, read it, feel free to rate it, and then as y'all are doing that, I would love to have a conversation amongst us. Like what are some of our values that we're bringing into the holiday season? So I know for myself, one that I'm bringing in is love, of course. I think quality time is extremely important for me, and knowing that the people that I love are also feeling loved by me and feeling cared by me. And so I know that's definitely something that I'm going to be prioritizing as I'm spending time with family. How about for y'all?
I feel like, first of all, there's like so many good ones on there. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pick because like I want them all, but yeah, right. There's some good ones, and then also it changes. But for just right now in the moment, I think like I'm gonna go with like honesty, because I just appreciate whenever people are like, I don't mean honesty like telling the truth. I mean just like being our true selves. Like I'm not trying to put up a front for anybody. I'm not trying to put up a front for like mom or brothers or whatever it is. Like I just want to be real with people, and I want people to be real with me. And then also creativity. I love creativity because like I just like to
Yeah.
even in just in talking and like storytelling and stuff, like it's cool.
I have a question. What is one way that you would like to be creative this holiday season?
Yeah, so for me, like one way to be creative, especially like around family and friends and loved ones, is to have conversations and like draw on people's strengths in like a creative way. So like whenever I'm interacting with somebody, like kind of like create opportunities for them to like engage with me like at their best potential. So like I know if somebody like tells funny stories,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give them an opportunity to like tell funny stories.
Yeah.
Or like my brother, like he like does like wordplay and stuff, and so like I'm gonna like engage with that with him.
Awesome.
And so like yeah, that. And then I also created one, like a new one that wasn't on there for me, which is like sobriety. So I'm like sober and I don't really drink or do any substances and stuff like that, and that's really important for me to like know that and like keep that, especially around the holiday, because people drink and
Yeah.
there's parties and stuff, and I do go and I partake in those things, but I don't partake in like the substance part of it or the alcohol. So that's a big thing for me and it's important.
Yeah. So I'm hearing some things through the values that you shared, some things that are important for you during the holidays is that you can show up fully authentically as yourself. You're being creative about the ways that you're allowing others to show up authentically with you. And then also making sure you're staying safe. You've put a lot of work into this, and so making sure that that's still happening during these times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
How about you, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because I had, some in mind when I was first looking at it, and then after, William was talking, I was like, oh, right, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Like, well, for one, like you said, love, I think that's just the core of it. When I'm going into the holiday season, I'm thinking about love and how, like, I really feel like that shows up in the sense of honesty, because when I look at the word honesty too, I don't just think of like, oh, I'm going to tell the truth, but I think of having like a genuine experience and just like being my present self.
Yeah.
Because, to me, a good holiday experience is I can be myself, I can have a good time, I don't have to feel like, I have to hold back some part of me or whatever, and so I'm really blessed when I'm able to do that. And then on top of that, I feel like humor. Because I feel like, those are the three things. Like if I'm having like a holiday gathering, which is like usually when my family gets to see each other,
Right.
it's, you want there to be love, you want there to be, genuine authenticity, through honesty, and then you also want there to be humor. Like there's a lot of laughing that we do, and I feel like it's a big part of the bonding and the holiday experience I look for.
What do you feel like humor, why is that so important to be present during the holiday experience for you?
I think that's just like, I don't know, I think maybe it's just tradition, because it's not like, okay, we have to laugh every time we hang out, but
Yeah.
like, every time my cousins and I get together, especially on like my dad's side, we're always just laughing, like giggling about stuff, and I feel like that's kind of been part of the tradition and whatnot, and so I feel like that's just something I'm like, okay, I laughed, I kind of was like out of the moment for a bit, or I was in the moment, I was like, out of my head, and it's like, okay, that was a good dinner.
Yeah, something I think about too with like the idea of tradition, it can be humor, it can be like the way that we dress, it can be a lot of different things, right? It like allows our mental and our emotional to like really arrive at a space, right? Of like, I'm here, I'm with family, and it's time to like do that now. So I love that. Yeah, thanks y'all for having that conversation with me. So the next part is how knowing the values of our family and community can help us manage our expectations and create a more quality experience. So again, like I said earlier, although we're all individuals, we're also part of a larger collective, right? And so it's going to be really important to, yes, think about our own values, but think also about the values of our family, our friends, and our society as well. So what I'm thinking about for myself is if I'm prioritizing love, some other things that I would love to prioritize are like calmness. I'm wondering like how does that actually fit in with my family? So for example, my family doesn't really prioritize calmness. They like a lot of bit more of the little bit of chaos. People are showing up a little bit later because that's just how they show up, and that's just what they're prioritizing as well. And so it's going to be important for myself to think of like, okay, if my priority is calmness, how can I make that happen? Or how can I be a little bit flexible about it too? If it's also a moment to maybe like push my comfort zone a little bit. I'm thinking about for my friends, you know, it's prioritizing maybe making really good food and things like that. So how can I show up in a space with a really great dish? And society, I'm definitely thinking like society tends to prioritize like material things a lot, like the gift giving, and we're buying the new outfit and we are like decorating and things like that. And so that doesn't really tend to be a priority for me, but how can I still honor the holidays in a way where my friends, my family, and parts of myself are also being influenced by those values. And so I'm wondering for the both of you, like what are some values that you think your family, friends, and society have that you might have to be taking into consideration as you're showing up during the holidays?
I think that it's funny whenever you said, like, I calmness and my family chaotic is like, oh yeah, like, there's these things that happen every time I engage with my family that like they push my buttons, and like it doesn't matter like what I do beforehand or during, like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Every time. And like for me, like just even knowing that's gonna happen and like, oh yeah, they're gonna push my buttons, like, because when I hang out with my family, that's what happens. And just like giving it permission and being like, and it's okay, and that's what happens, and like I don't need to get all worked up and do whatever, and it's just part of the deal, like is what's gonna happen. I think just knowing that for me, because they do have different values than I do, and just giving them permission to have those and me permission to have mine, and we still love each other and we're family, like that's cool. And then also, I don't know, my friends I can pick, so my friends seem to have more common values than me with my family, which is really cool, and I appreciate that. And then society, yeah, the holidays tend to mean something different than me than the whole society, whereas like it's just kind of like this marketed holiday season thing, and for me it's actually a time to like reflect on what's happening in the past and like present and like future. And yeah, but I mean it's cool too just to see everybody be excited about it as well, and whether it's the same or not, it's cool to just have it, to see everybody affected by it in some way. So yeah, that's what it's like for me.
Yeah. And I got our 1 minute. And Kurt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for one, my values are fairly consistent through my family and friends.
Yeah.
I think with family, you know, it's a lot of stuff like, you know, respecting. I just think about like what would guide my behavior at a family event. Because I think with the holidays, being the holidays, I'm not just thinking about like the holidays in general, but I'm focusing more on like, okay, like Christmas dinner with this side of the family, Christmas dinner with that side of the family. And I think like for one, respecting my elders and like, you know, making sure I eat all the food they put in front of me. And like on my mom's side, you know, attending to my cousins who are younger and more shy, versus on the other side where maybe I'm just, you know, don't have as much of a leadership role, but also just I'm one of the oldest, and so kind of like, you know, being a leader among the cousins. And then like with among friends, you know, I feel like we're all pretty standard on the same thing. You know, we'll wish each other like happy like Merry Christmas or like, you know, Happy Hanukkah, or, you know, whatever holiday you are celebrating. There's not too much of a difference. The only thing is with society, I don't exactly know. See, I don't know what society's values are. I feel like I don't know, and so you know, maybe I'm just distant from it, and I don't really, you know, I'm not like as aware of it. But maybe they want me to do more shopping. You know, maybe they want me to take a picture with Santa at the mall. Like, I don't know what the societal thing is, but I feel like I don't have too much of a conflict with it so far.
Yeah, and that's fair. If you aren't like fully aware of the values, sometimes you don't need to be fully aware. Sometimes they aren't like going to impact you too much. Or it could also be a moment of like, oh dang, maybe I should think about this a little bit harder. So you get to decide that. Something that I love hearing from you is also how being in different family spaces and different communities could also change what role you're playing and how you're showing up, and that can also impact your values. So I love to consider that as well. And Willing, something that you brought up was kind of like, if in family spaces values are a little bit different and people are kind of pushing buttons and things like that, But in friends, like there's more calmness. So it reminded me that if your values are not being prioritized in the same ways, even that you want or that you need in certain spaces, that they could be met in other places. I know that's the same case for me too. I'm like, I know that Dia's gonna come late, and I know she's gonna like have us like do a whole bunch of stuff that we don't want to do. But maybe it's a good time for me to think like, I'm gonna schedule some friend time later tonight or tomorrow or something like that. And I know I'm gonna have a nice peaceful time because our values are really in alignment. And so it's just gonna be a nice, peaceful, smooth space. Yeah. So yeah, that's our conversations about values, and I just want to thank y'all. And next to Jenna to talk about some boundaries and how we can actually put these into practice.
Hi, I'm Jenna and I'm a counselor at SCARE, and today we're going to be talking about setting expectations. So just briefly checking in on expectations around the holidays. For myself, I know that I come from a Mormon culture, so there are expectations in my family that come from that culture. So just kind of like reflecting on where you come from can help you understand some of those expectations that you or others are setting. I know within my family, we're often expected to go see the lights, and often there's a lot of Christian morals involved and like stories from the Bible that come up around Christmas. And so me just being able to understand that and respect that, even if those aren't my hopes or expectations for the holidays, can help us navigate that. So I'm going to be asking these two gentlemen a couple questions about their expectations. How has culture shaped your expectations of the holidays, guys? We'll start with William.
My expectations for the holidays, I'm going to go for the past and the present. So in the past, my family had like native culture as well as like Christian, and like it mixed. So that's what that looked like. And so, expectations were that we were going to like pray, and we were going to, that was pretty much it actually for Christian, like we pray, and then also talk about like our native customs and cultures, and like that's where we came from, and that we have, and keeping that alive. So that's kind of, there's always a discussion about that. I feel like it's even more native because then we would like go outside and connect with nature, and do that individually, and then like as a family too, like my brothers and cousins would go out and like climb in the trees and do that kind of stuff. And then now, my family isn't the same as it was before, so it's kind of just like me and like my children, and it's a little bit different. We kind of hang out, sometimes we're together, sometimes we're not, so sometimes I spend it with my friends, and my expectations for the holidays now are just kind of like connecting with people, keeping relationships alive, and so that's like what, and then the people that stay connected to me, like, I do expect them to like reach out to me, and they always do. So, I kind of respect everybody's like own approach to the holidays, and then mine's kind of different right now than it used to be. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had these expectations of prayer and nature in the past, and you also, for yourself, really expect to connect with others and others to reach out to you around the holidays.
Yeah, and then I actually, now that you just said it out loud, I do that now as well. I pray, and I spend time in nature, like for the holidays, like even if it is by myself.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What about for you, Kurt?
So I think it's kind of interesting to see how like my Korean background has influenced the holidays. I feel like it hasn't. I don't know. I mean, maybe it has, but I feel like it hasn't influenced Christmas too much, at least. In other words, like I think we still have dinner. We still try to meet and do presents under the tree. My families, like on my dad's side versus my mom's side, do differ a little bit. I think the expectations I go in towards my dad's side of the family, where I have more cousins, more, and especially more that are closer to my age, I usually am expecting a bit more of like okay, it's more festive, more like, emotionally nourishing and kind of fulfilling. I get that genuine social interaction, you get to hang out and have a good time. And I feel like I'm resting. On my mom's side, there were events that happened, but also like right now I have like two cousins that are a bit more shy, and I know my parents and try to make it like a good experience every time we do get together, and I'm sometimes in that weird limbo where I'm like, okay, I'm old enough to where I should be trying to like really interact with them and see where they're at. But part of me is also like, oh man, like every year, like I feel like I have to like go and do this, and it's two very different environments, I would say. And I'm curious to see how it is this year, because every year I grow, and who knows, maybe I'm now totally comfortable with just being like, yeah, all right, well, we're here for you today. Like let's watch Legos, or like something like that. And so I think the expectations vary per side of the family, and also just and also New Year's. We have a tradition, a Korean tradition, where we do blessings to our elders, and then we get money on New Year's. And so, it's kind of not an actual expectation, but sometimes it's like, okay, like, are we gonna do that again? If not, not only is there a lack of money, which is like the superficial part, but it's like, okay, why didn't we do that this year? Why didn't we get together and do that? Because sometimes we just didn't have the time. And it's like, okay, well, normally we do, so like, why aren't we doing it? But
Well, I love that you're able to reflect on seeing those differences and different sides of the family, and then also that there's maybe been inconsistency in the past, and like approaching this year with curiosity in yourself, and how like events and you being older will approach it.
yeah.
Very cool. And then let's move on to what emotions have I experienced around the holidays? What comes up for both of you? Well, we can start with William again.
I have like a lot of nostalgic memories of hanging out with family, going to spend time with.
Wait, so next we're gonna move on to what emotions have you experienced around the holidays? We'll start with William.
Emotions. So I have like a lot of nostalgia about spending time with my family, my mom's family, my brothers, and yeah, so like good positive emotions about like the past, but then also loss, like pain and loss, because whenever I lose family members, then like one of the most times that I recognize that they're not there is the holidays, because sometimes it's like, oh, it's the holidays and I'm gonna have an opportunity to like see everybody, and like I've always looked forward to that. And then like as the years have gone by, I lost more and more people, and it's like see everybody except grandma, like except dad, except grandpa, stuff like that. So but which is good too, because for me, like the emotion of like grief and loss is to remind me that like death is part of life, and to pay attention to that for myself and to live my life accordingly is important. And so yeah, and then togetherness and like belonging, because that's when I connect with my people more. And so love,
for sure.
the emotion of love, which is a complicated emotion, but yeah, I feel that a lot during the holidays too.
Yeah, so you said a few emotions. You said nostalgia, you also said loss and love. So I'm definitely seeing like there's positive aspects and hard aspects about it as well.
Yeah, which is
Sure.
good, because that's life, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think most people could relate with that.
mhm.
Kurt, what emotions come up for you around the holidays?
I feel like it's just I don't know. I think part of it is the nostalgia too, but I definitely have a very like strong feeling. Just like I just feel it. Like I feel alive when I'm celebrating my family. And I think part of me is like, okay, like I'm better with being in the flow of it now. But before, I may have had times where I'm like, oh, this is such a special time, and this is really a time when like I'm connecting with my family and people, so I really want to be in like a good place, good headspace, and have everything be like good going to this. But yeah, it's like nostalgia. It's a lot of like warmth. I don't even know how to like label it as like actual emotions, but it's just a lot of warmth and, you know, love. And I think also part of it is like, it is related, I feel like, to my grandma, because usually, you know, I don't get to see my grandma as often these days. And when we do at the holidays, I usually, you know, say hi or something, and you know, we might interact throughout the meal. But there's kind of a language barrier, and as we get older, like the kids gonna hang out with the kids, the adults hang out with the adults, and my grandma usually sits at the table with the adults. I'm thinking on my dad's side, and my grandma's not doing too well right now, but before, the way that, you know, we would kind of sit at the table was that like she would just kind of sit there and she would just be happy to be there. But I just feel like in terms of how I want to communicate and kind of express my love and, you know, how I feel to her is harder because we don't, like, I don't speak Korean as fluently, and she's getting older. And so there's kind of that like, oh, like I'm so glad you're here, and, you know, giving her a hug and stuff. But there's also a little bit of that yearning of like, oh, I wish we could do a little more. You know, I wish she could like come upstairs and have as much fun as like, you know, the other cousins are having or something. And then on like my mom's side, I feel like, you know, similar thing. I mean, she's doing all right, but, you know, I want to express that love to my grandma. But there's a language barrier there, and then, you know, there's also just a different way of like communicating love. I feel like, you know, like food, or, you know, telling you like that you should do this, or something like that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough that there's that language barrier, because it sounds like you're experiencing distance with your grandma in the past, and that there's been change in the dynamic a little bit in how she comes to the party.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what have I expected from others around the holidays in the past? What comes up for you guys when you think of this question? And we can start with William again.
I think in the past, for sure, more so than now. I don't know if we're going to do the future, but in the past, definitely like expect people to show up. It's like I want people to show up, and if I don't, like always, I kind of actually get bummed out. Like, oh, why didn't like so and so call me? Like, why didn't this relative like come to the family dinner or whatever it was? So there's that, and then also like, yeah, just to be together, like and then within that same thing, like me getting bummed out, is also like people do show up and I expect it. So then like I'm excited. And now it's like, oh, everybody's here, kind of like the warmth thing. It's like, oh, everybody's here, and like we're having a good time. And, like, this is really cool, and like I feel connected, and this is like I feel alive, like you said. And that part of it's like really invigorating, like recharging for like there in the moment, and then also just like I guess maybe for like the whole year until the next time you like see each other. It's like, oh, cool, like I come from. This is where I come from, and like these are my people, and like this is we get to connect, and like it's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that the part that you really expect is for people to show up and to connect with one another.
Yeah.
Kurt, what about for you?
I do feel like I kind of, in a way, do expect people to show up as well. I know that as like the cousins grow older, sometimes we just have stuff and we can't always make it. And sometimes, you know, the distance is just hard, or it snows and we can't like drive up the hill or something. But I feel like, yeah, there's somewhat of an expectation for people to show up, because there's also somewhat of an expectation for like, you know, gifts and gift exchanging. Yeah, I just feel like, you know, there's definitely an expectation for some effort. Like I'm alright if, you know, things, you know, if we don't do gifts, or if we, you know, can't make maybe like the whole dinner thing. I mean, I'll still be disappointed if we can't have our dinner. I feel like that's like the main thing. But I'm not like set on all of these. I think the main expectation is I just have, you know, part of me is like, okay, let's get some effort and let's try. As long as we're trying, you know, I feel like that's most important.
Absolutely. It's interesting because while you're talking about like the meal, it reminded me of how much I expect of my mother and my mother-in-law, and how much like cooking and work goes into their part. And though I'd like to think most of the time I'd be like, okay, if the meal wasn't there, I think it would be really hard and sad.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, I'm like, oh, I think I do expect that. I do expect effort and people to show up in a certain way. And sometimes that can be hard if they don't have that energy or that ability. And then we've got, okay, and then we've got a couple more questions on here for you guys to reflect on. What do I want the holidays to look like this year, and what do I need this holiday season? And then next we're going to talk about practicing setting boundaries. So we've got a quick how-to in 11 steps. 1 is to practice. 2, accept that your needs are important. 3, be realistic. 4, you can be both firm and kind. 5, be direct. 6, walk away when you need to. 7, remember what you've changed. 8, gently remind. 9, be assertive. 10, make a list. And 11, talk to a counselor if you need. So just to briefly talk through these steps, for you guys, I'm curious, what's the hardest about setting boundaries for you? Or is there a step that you're working on still?
I don't know what the actual step would be here, but sometimes after I've set the boundary, it's like kind of sitting with the anxiety that might come from that. It's like, okay, I set the boundary. Like, are they like, you know, I might be thinking, what are they thinking now? Do they feel, am I like now separated from everyone else? Am I like, you know, have I like been like, okay, I can't do this, but now I can't, you know, be part of that or something? And so I feel like getting that past that like initial stage after you set the boundary of like that what if, you just kind of have to, you know, get through that.
Yeah, for sure. How about for you, William?
I think for me it would be like the emotional aspect. So like setting a boundary and then not letting like impulsive emotions like change it and let it go. Like due to like even something that could be considered good, like empathy. Like, oh, I want this person to like be okay.
So it's hard to not go back on it sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, it is. Even though like I know that like boundaries are healthy and safe for people, for me and the other person, like sometimes it's like, oh, but I want them to be safe right now.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds to me for both of you, sometimes it's hard to remember that the boundary can help the relationship and help you guys be closer to people. And when sometimes it feels like distance or hard at first, initially. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate with that. I liked this section, setting boundaries takes practice. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Practicing ahead of time, writing down what is important to you, being clear, and most importantly, knowing that you're worth it all help in setting boundaries with family. So often when we set boundaries, it can be really difficult at first and uncomfortable, anxiety provoking. We can go back on boundaries. That's very normal and it can be hard and take practice. And it can help us be closer to people in the end. So we have boundary styles here. So we've got porous boundaries, healthy boundaries, and rigid boundaries. And within this slide, you can kind of see the explanation of each one. And often in family dynamics, sometimes when we set a boundary, it might start off a little too rigid before it gets healthy. Or sometimes we're very porous and before we're healthy with boundaries. So that's just a visual to look at. And then I've got some examples of boundaries here. And for you guys, I'm curious what boundaries you're hoping to implement in this holiday season with family. I've got some examples here to help you brainstorm specifically.
I think for me, my biggest thing with family is that I love to hang out and spend time with them. And I like it. I just like things to be scheduled and structured. So like I tell my family ahead of time, like, hey, I'm willing to spend time it's holiday season, and like I want to get together and like let's set something up. And then like sometimes what happens is they'll be like, okay, but then nothing will happen, and they'll call me like a couple days before and be like, oh, okay, this is when it is, and I have something else, and like my boundary is like, no, I have something else set up, and like I tried to make plans with you for like the last month and a half, and so like,
Yeah.
and so for me, like that's important too, because then, yeah, I just like am rewarding the whole like impulse of like, oh, let's do something, and then like changing my schedule.
Mhm.
So for me, it's like, I gotta stick to that. So if you wanna set something up with me, let's set it up. But then also like still having the freedom to be like, spontaneous, but just like if I've got something set up, like not like blowing off somebody because somebody didn't plan it.
Yeah,
It's a
that
little
makes sense.
complicated, but.
No, yeah, it makes sense to me. It's needing that structure and also being flexible where you can't be if you don't have other plans set.
Yeah.
Kurt, how about for you?
You know, I feel like I don't necessarily have too many boundaries I need to set with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of become, you know, fine-tuned over the years what we expect from each other and what we're kind of going for. The only thing I can think of right now is on my mom's side, I have like one specific uncle, but two uncles that they're not related by blood, but they're, you know, two uncles, and sometimes I don't know what it is. I'll just like see them and I'll give them a nod. That's the only interaction we'll have for the rest of the night, and it's like, you know, I don't know if that's a boundary I'm holding for myself that I just don't want to like engage in an awkward experience, or if it's, you know, also, but if it's also like a boundary I'm setting for myself, or like a limitation, like where it's like, you know, maybe this year I should finally go and ask about his business, you know, and like, you know, and learn a bit more. But there's there's like kind of like that little bit of a barrier, and so whether it's a boundary I'm setting for myself, that's like, you know, an uncomfortable situation I don't want to be a part of, or I'm limiting myself because it's an uncomfortable situation, but I know I would do better if I kind of brush past it.
Yeah, and so wanting to get to know relatives or connect more with people at the holidays, I think a lot of people could relate to that. And it's tough because, you know, maybe there have been several years that have gone by that you haven't, and you've kind of established a new norm and a new rhythm, but yeah, I love that idea, and I'm curious how you'll implement it, even if it's in a small way this year. Yeah, that's a great example. Okay, and then we have some examples of boundaries and what they can sound like when you're setting one. So I'll just read through those. I can help, but I cannot do this for you. I am not responsible for your emotions. I respect your opinion, but I have my own opinion as well. I understand you're upset, and I am not okay with being spoken to that way. I am done talking about this. I need you to understand what I'm feeling. I don't need help problem solving right now. Right now, I need some time to myself. I would love to hear more about this later. I understand I am important to you, and while I care about you, I need some space, or simply no. So those are some ideas of boundaries and setting them. Now we're at lunch.
Hello everybody, welcome to Scare's virtual holiday de-stress activity. Alito, my name is William. I am Choctaw Native from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I'm a social worker here at Scare, and this is...
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elise. I'm Purepecha from Chirankeri, Michoacan. I'm the educational counselor here at Scare, and I will be helping William demonstrate how to create a medicine bag so you can enjoy this activity with your family and loved ones. So, get started.
Let's go ahead and get started. So, if you all have one of these, it should just look like this unopened, and so we'll just go ahead and open it up. Yeah, so like this is a time to kind of just like enjoy. If you're doing this by yourself, cool. Now you're doing it with us too. But also, you know, if you can do it with family members, sometimes that's really cool and fun. A way to kind of interact and communicate while we're doing something kind of like puts us in the moment instead of like either in the past or the future, so that can be good.
And everything that you need to create the bag itself is going to be in the kit. So when you open it, you'll see that you have the actual bag, and it has perforated holes and actual holes, so the stitching is really easy, the lacy stitch at the top, and then we'll be showing how to go through the side. A needle for threading should be included. It's actually taped on the back. It can be hard to miss, so you just want to make sure that you find that. Take that out of the little taped packaging, and then you have the sinew here for the actual threading of the side of the bag, and then the lace for the top where we'll be tying.
Cool. Yeah, and the reason why I picked this activity specifically, as you go ahead and just take everything out of the bag and get it situated, is whenever I was younger, we used to make medicine bags all the time. So we had a full leather kit. We would get leather, and then we had like the leather puncher to like make stuff like is in the top of the bag, and we had like big needles to go through stuff, and then we also had like a couple different leather punchers, and we had a little one so we could make kind of like what is here, like these like perforations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember whenever I was younger, I would just kind of like be there with my dad, and my grandpa was usually around, and he'd be putting stuff together, and I would just kind of like participate. And then I made my first one, and it was kind of big. It was more like a shoulder bag because it was just so big. But then just throughout the years, like I would just spend time doing it and get better and better. And then, yeah, like I want to say by the time I was like a teenager, I had some pretty nice bags that were important to me, and they had stuff in them. And we'll go ahead and talk more later about what I've put in them, and then at least have some good information too about some herbal medicines and stuff like that, some medicine, plant medicine.
Yeah, and also depending on where you're from or what your culture practices, sometimes I've seen that we all kind of have our own little rendition of the medicine bag. So we have moraditos that we either will use deer skin, or we also use cloth as well. So we weave the cloth, and it will have really beautiful designs. Traditionally, it can be worn within the clothing, kind of like hidden onto for skin to skin contact, or over the clothing as well. But again, it's all depending on what your traditions are. I've made both. I've made with deer skin. I've made with the moralitos, like actually weaving. And then I've had gifted to me, which is very special and sacred, from elders and loved ones. And typically that's also traditionally like we would be making them for someone else. But that's not to say you can make them for yourself as well. And this is kind of what we're demonstrating, but this could be a gift for someone too.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be for you.
Keep it for yourself if you want,
Mm-hmm.
and fill it with stuff that's gonna remind you of your medicine, or you can give it to somebody. And as you're talking, and I just unpacked everything, and I'm like smelling this leather, and it's
Yes.
like bringing back memories of
It's cool. Even
family
feeling the
times,
sinew
good
like this.
times, yeah.
It's cool. And
Yeah.
this is a really good chance to be intentional with everything too. Like really feel the material, get a sense of what it is that you're doing, get a sense of what side you would like to show, because it doesn't have to be either or. If you want the soft side out, you can absolutely do that. If you want the rough side out, same thing. And that's going to determine how you lay your bags when we sew them.
Yeah.
So I kind of like this suede part, soft part
The
on the
smooth,
out.
like the soft fuzzies part.
Yeah, I like that on the outside.
Yeah.
So that's how I think I'm gonna do mine. Or maybe even one or the other, kind of like front back piece. It's completely up to you. Like I said, traditionally, it really depends on what material you're using and how it's made, and then what you're putting inside of them. And so as we kind of demonstrate and make our own, we're going to discuss our own traditions, the significance of what we put inside, and then just kind of a little bit of what the significance and representation of each sacred item is, so you guys have a good idea of, and you can think about what you want to include in yours as well, and even create your own traditions. I think this is a good moment, and it's important to be able to create your own traditions as well within your family union, whatever you find is spiritual to you, meaningful to you. It's still your culture. It's still part of our culture. So
Yeah, and this is also for me. It's been like a way of like learning about culture and about like staying connected to it, and so this is an opportunity for you with your family members to do the same too. I'll share some things that I've learned about my spiritual journey and how it relates to this as well in a little bit. So I think
Nice.
I'm gonna do the opposite, and mine's gonna be this way out, like the shiny
Okay.
side out. And so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and sew it together like this with the fuzzy side out, and then whenever I'm done sewing, I'm gonna flip it inside out. So this will be the
Perfect.
outside, and you can't see the stitches. So you can do that if you want, or you can just do the stitches and leave the stitches on the outside, either way that you want it. So the first thing that I did here was I just kind of took the sinew and I strung it
Threaded it through?
threaded it through the eyelet here, and this isn't really sharp, but it is a little bit, so be careful with that. Make sure you don't poke yourself. And for me, I'm just gonna go ahead and like leave a little bit out. If you want to, you could like tie this to make sure that it doesn't pull through.
it's easier to leave it out, just
Yeah.
kind of like if this is your first one or anything. We'll show you, if you leave a little bit of space, how you can tie it, and it's a little bit easier, but it's completely up to you. If you're more experienced with sewing and kind of want to play around with the stitches here, and you know you've made something like this before, then absolutely follow what your traditional style is. But we're just kind of doing a demonstration for simply kind of getting it through and like starting.
Right. Oh, and I've got it backwards here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this way. And you just start in one of the top corners, and you go ahead and and go through both of the perforated holes.
And it should go right through. You shouldn't have to force anything with this. Since they're perforated already, it should be really easy. And then the sinew is like wax. I'm pretty sure this is like a synthetic wax version. It feels like the real thing, and it is nice and smooth when it goes through. So you shouldn't have any struggle with this. If you are struggling, you might be missing the perforated hole. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull mine all the way through, so I can have all of this to work with. So I want like all the rest of this to go around. Depending on what stitch you do, you might need it. But I'm just gonna do like a straight stitch, so I won't need it right now. But if you want to do kind of like a side stitch, it'll take more to do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. And then at the end here, I have this left. I'm just gonna go ahead and tie it. Just gonna do like a simple, like you can, there's different kind of knots. You can kind of like loop it twice, or you can loop it once. I'm just gonna do like a simple, just in case there's those of us who aren't familiar with knots, a simple double knot, because it's probably the easiest, and everybody can definitely do that. And I just noticed that I'm off one, so I'm not lined up straight, so I'm gonna go back out, pull this out.
And it's good to pay attention to these things. This is all about intentional work. You don't want to rush through any of this. This is a really good mindful practice, and traditionally that is kind of how you want to approach this. This is, at the end of the day, this is sacred medicine that we're working with, so we want to be as intentional as possible. Give ourselves grace if we are, you know, messing up or missing a hole or whatever the case is. You know, just be patient with yourself and give yourself a moment to make it how you want it to be.
Absolutely, I love that. This is just being mindful about this, and then also at the same time just kind of being aware, like of what this is. You know, this is a medicine bag. This is us intentionally building a place where we can store symbolic things and physical things that are our medicine, that help balance us. Like, if you're familiar with the medicine wheel, that balance us on the medicine wheel. So this is like us being intentional of creating that space within ourselves and then actually physically. It's kind of what the medicine bag is for me, is like having things physical that I can go to and connect to that like remind me of like the strength that I have within. Or like my strengths and like what I can do to balance myself like mentally. So yeah, and so what we're gonna do next is, like I said, I'm just gonna do a straight lace, and I'm just gonna start. If you wanna like do a lace like around, it looks a little bit prettier if you're not gonna flip it inside out. So yeah, just go ahead and start to thread it through and kind of go all the way around to the other end, and then when we get to the other end, we'll tie it. And so as we're doing this, we'll tell some stories and significance of what the medicine bag is to us.
Nice. Yes. Talk story, you know how we do.
For sure.
And we'll also show our process as we go, so you can kind of already start to see how it's coming together, and we'll show you so you can feel like you're on the right track and that you know, it's looking similar. But remember, this is all it's for you or for a loved one, so it's okay, especially if you're going to have the stitching on the inside when you fold it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, especially if this is your first time, it's just again, being mindful and paying attention to what you're doing, but it doesn't have to be pretty perfect or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good thing that you're following along, but then these are all going to be different because we're all each our own individual, and that kind of reminds me of a way that I can connect this to the medicine wheel, which of course it's all connected. And you know, the medicine wheel is symbolic of that this is a cycle, that life is a cycle, nature has its cycle, and we're all in different places in these cycles, you know. Sometimes we're in similar places to other people, and sometimes we're not. We're far apart, and we're in different parts of the cycle. But yeah, so the medicine wheel to me has always been described as a way for me to recognize like where I'm at in the cycle of life, whether it's like I'm in the beginning stages, or if I'm in like the implementation stage of like knowledge that I've learned, or ending stage and death. And just kind of recognizing where I'm at in certain aspects of that, because we can be like in different places of the cycle in different aspects of our life at the same time. It gets a little bit complicated, but yeah, so, and just like recognizing like, oh, and like my journey, like in my education, like where am I at with that? Like, am I at the beginning? Am I at like an ending point? And then also like with relationships, you know, I remember whenever my father passed away a few years ago, I recognized that I was at the end of that relationship with him, and parts of that were difficult, and then parts of it were actually really beautiful. Saying goodbye, recognizing the value that was there, and deciding and realizing, recognizing how I was going to carry on the good things of that relationship in my life. So yeah, that's kind of like the medicine wheel, like in a nutshell, as far as like how I use it in my life and how it's been introduced to me. And then also just like staying balanced, balancing that like emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. And so I'll go ahead and tell a story of like a spiritual lesson that I learned that is directly related to medicine bag. And so, you know, like I said before, I made medicine bags and had them and used to pick things up and put them in them. And I picked up a rock. So I grew up and we used to go out in nature all the time, big part of our childhood, big part of our family culture, and then also connected it with our native culture. Picked up a rock and had it in my bag and had it forever. And it was important to me, it was special to me because it was you know, I'm native, this is my identity, and I have this bag and I have this rock in here, and it's cool, it's got it from nature. And then one time my grandma had a conversation with me about the rock, and she said, "Oh, what does this mean to you?" I was just kind of like, "Oh, it's my rock, and this is my medicine bag, and this is like how I'm native, and this is how I practice my activity," which was, you know, very basic and like very not really, you know, it was just basic. And then she had a conversation with me that I still remember to this day that was about how this rock has been around for like thousands and thousands of years, and this rock maybe at one time was on the top of a mountain, and then water carried it down a stream, and then it made its way to the field in which I picked it up at, and it was here with me now. And then how this could symbolize the love that my ancestors had for each other and had for the land, and how they took care of the land and took care of each other, and then how that manifests into my life today, into where I'm able to receive all these things that I have that I'm grateful for, and to be able to participate and love myself. And that was like really the first time I ever had that lesson. And so now all of a sudden this rock that was definitely part of like me and this medicine bag and my native culture, now it is a remembrance of like a spiritual lesson that like I have had people in my past ancestors participate in this life and in this world through love, and because of that I've been gifted that to be have loved, and really if you look at it in just a worldview, like people participate in love, and it's given us things that we're able to access today, energy and things and spiritual lessons. And yeah, so it's this bag and it's like this physical thing, and you're liking it right now, but the things that are inside of it and the intentions at which we interact with it, with ourselves, and then also the people that we can teach things, it can become like a spiritual practice that we can carry on.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that, William.
Yeah, thank you.
And with all our participants, our family and relatives. And if anyone isn't familiar with the medicine wheel or the sacred hoop, it is a native indigenous approach to wellness. It is encompassing and incorporating the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical states of our well-being, and how to balance all of those. And so it's a really good way to kind of check in with yourself and others to see where you might stand in that realm, because as metaphysical beings, we are constantly in flux with all of those things, right? Emotionally, mental, physical, and all of that plays a role. And so the medicine wheel encompasses all of those things to help us remember that all of that matters, that it's not just about physical well-being, it's not just about emotional, all of that comes together. And so following the medicine wheel and just using it as a guide is a great first step in not only connecting to your culture, but also connecting to yourself and seeing where you are. And so just kind of there's colors that represent certain things. I've noticed that many tribes and cultures have the same approach in terms of the wheel, the sacred hoop, but they might look different. Colors might be different. Mm-hmm. It could still symbolize 4 directions. They might have different meanings, but it always represents physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. So that at least is always going to be universal, and then depending on the symbolism for things, you might see variations in that. But also just kind of remembering too that we're working with like our relatives here, like we were talking about. William was saying about the rock, right, and his grandmother sharing the journey of the rock, and just remembering that these are our relatives. Mother Earth, Father Sky, these are our loved ones. We're connected to them because they're our family, and they are alive and they're guiding us and they're giving us, they're offering so graciously their healing and their knowledge and their wisdom. And if we just sit and listen, we can gain a lot from nature, and maybe not in words, but in feeling, in spirit, in being more grounded, just paying attention, and that kind of transitioned us into what we would be including in our bags, right? So we're talking about encompassing the medicine wheel, we're talking about how this can be a form of grounding for us, and so what are we going to put inside? Again, every culture is different, so I can only speak on what I do and then my knowledge of what I know from other relatives in other tribes, in other cultures. So I'll be more than happy to share what my experience has been. And then again, I always encourage you to kind of look into your own self, discuss with your family, and then also discuss, maybe learn, this could be a great opportunity to learn more about your cultural traditions in your tribe as well. What is it that traditionally has been placed in these medicine bags? And so for me, there was always a component of an earth element. So whether that be sacred soil from the mountains, whether that be sand from the beach, or a stone quartz, or something that's symbolizing, again, the earthy terrain, rocks, something like that. And again, it doesn't have to be something super soil, it doesn't have to be quartz, it doesn't have to be something you purchased. It can be just something that really called to you when you were in nature, when you were asking Mother Earth for guidance and grace, and for her to help you in a time of need. And so yeah, something personal from a family relative, or like I said, something that brings me healing, or friend, or can be from a friend. Yeah, again, something from the human realm. And again, this is just traditionally in our culture. And then a sacred herb or herbs. It doesn't have to be just one. Sage, cedar, tobacco, sweetgrass, those are very, very sacred to us, but we also, we have a deep connection to pine, and we do a lot of our pine needle weavings, and we make tea. It's very healing medicine to us. The trees bring water, so pine is also very sacred, so that's something that I have included in my bags as well.
I want to go ahead and just bring up that we have, because we're talking about tobacco, and here at Scare we have a tupi
Yeah.
thing that we do with Julie, and she kind of talks about like the sacred aspect of tobacco, and then also how it's used today, and some of how it's used today, and like the harms that go along with that. So
Right.
if you're interested in that, just reach out to somebody here and we can hook you up with that.
Definitely. And tupi is amazing for the youth, to learn about the sacred ways, and then how to prevent them from potentially engaging in the harmful ways that it is available to them now. Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, including anything that is from a sacred herb. So, and again, this can vary depending on what your culture is and where your tribe is. So I mentioned the 4 sacred herbs, and then, like I said, pine is very sacred to me and my people. Same thing with nurite. We have, it smells amazing. I can just, even discussing it, I can picture it. I foraged at that in the mountains with my family many times, which brings me to, when you're gathering items to put in your bag, especially if they're coming from the earth, we want to be really mindful when we collect anything, right? From Mother Earth.
I love this part.
Yes, this is really
Permissions.
important. It's really important because as Indigenous people, throughout history and what I've learned just in my teachings from my family, we are in right relationship with Mother Earth. And in order to maintain that relationship and maintain that respect, we have to follow our traditions, which means we're asking permission, which means we're giving offerings, which means we are saying thank you. So when you enter this space, asking permission to enter the forest, asking permission to enter the water, you know, asking permission to just even bring your energy into this space, because that's showing that you are aware of the spiritual significance of the space you're in, and that you recognize that like it's a privilege for you to be there, and asking permission for that. And
I like,
Go ahead.
if I could just say one thing.
Yeah,
about that
please.
Too, yeah. And it's kind of hard sometimes whenever we get caught up in like what's going on around us and like how we use, and I want to say that, like use the earth and the resources that we have
yes.
to like gain from, and how that's the culture that's set up. And then to recognize the difference of the cultures that we come from, it's been different. It's been, because whenever we think about it from the native way, it's that we take care of. We're caretakers of the earth.
We're stewards.
Caretakers of nature, and yes, stewards of the animals and the plants and Mother Earth. And so whenever we get caught up in kind of what's going on today, sometimes it's hard to remember that, but we can remember that by exactly what Elise is talking about. Whenever we go and we do take a stone or a leaf or some herbs, having like the mindfulness to just sit there and say, I'm asking permission to take this, and I'm giving thanks, and I'm thankful for this and for the nature that's here, and asking, is there any way that I can take care of and do anything? And then maybe that little moment turns into figuring out a way that we can caretake for the earth. And yeah, that's definitely an important part for me in my personal walk and how I'm trying to do my existence here. So thank you for bringing it up. I just wanted to
No, thank you, William, of course. And I think that's really important too, because there are a lot of folks who might feel like their way is the only way, and so you have to burn something, you have to give something physical, and that's not I've been taught to even give a song, to even, just be in prayer, but put my knees and my head to the ground in gratitude. And that's enough. It doesn't have to be, like a monetary value type of type of offering. It just can be something that you feel called to do. The whole point is to be mindful and to just recognize what is happening, and then that Earth is being so gracious of giving us something without asking us of anything. And so all we can do is our due diligence and just giving back and saying thank you. And yeah, I mean, we're urban, we're modern, so I get it. Things, it's different now. It's not necessarily the old ways, but it's okay. We can figure out our new ways as long as we're just being mindful.
And remembering the old ways and keeping them alive
Yes.
by doing this is important too, because
Absolutely.
it reminds us of where we come from.
Right. Alright, how are you doing?
I'm going ahead and I'm already turning mine inside out.
Nice.
And then I created like a little nook right here, like I'm gonna have like the string, but then also whenever I tied it, if you tie it the right way, you can do that. So I did that. Because it's just like kind of like a finger thing. And then I'm going to cut this off, and I want to cut this off as well. And then, yeah, that's what it looks like whenever you turn it inside out. You can't
Looks
see the
good.
stitches now. Elise.
William's obviously faster than me,
She
but
did
you
beautiful
can
stitches,
see.
though. You don't even need to turn that inside out.
Honestly, I really like this, and so
Yeah.
you can leave it like this. I'm still debating what I'm gonna do, but this so you can kind of see what it looks like. And it's super simple. You can even go in the other way and cross them over for like a pretty design. It could be an opportunity to add some beads. I mean, you can really make this your own and personalize it. But we're just kind of giving you, a little tutorial of how to work with the material that we gave you guys.
Cool. And then as I am kind of doing this last clothing, so I put in the leather and I'm kind of going in there so I can close it and open it. We'll go ahead and kind of wrap up here.
Yes.
And I just want to remind you, like, whenever we're doing this, like, the whole point is to de-stress, right? So I just wanted to remind you that the whole point of doing this is de-stress. We're trying to connect. If we're doing it with people, if we're doing it by ourselves, we're trying to kind of decouple and unplug and just being mindful and like engaging in something like this and not engaging in our phones and like not engaging in our relationships if they're getting too much for us right now, and just doing this as a way to just connect and like have a good time and like enjoy ourselves and think about what's specific to us. And all these we shared a lot about what's specific to us, but make this yours. Like, this is your experience right here.
And then share with us, please. We'd love photos of when these are complete, what you guys thought about this, if you would like to see more activities like this. Remember, we're here to serve you, the community, and what brings you healing and wellness is really important to us. And so if you found that this was helpful, that you enjoyed this, we'd love to do more things like this, so please let us know, and especially share about your own culture as well. Like I said, we're a very diverse people. We come from all different types of cultures, even if we're indigenous. That doesn't mean we have the same kind of practices, and so we always love learning about what our participants are partaking in and what is important to you. So please share, and I'm finally done. I don't know, I think I really like the outside, so I might leave it like this. We'll see.
Looks good.
Thank you. But
I'm gonna go ahead and just show this real
the
quick.
final product
Kind of
for
tie this up,
yeah, let's see it.
and then you can put this anywhere. But and of course, like I said, like I'm gonna cut these off, and
Okay.
cinching that up kind of ties it,
Yeah.
and then I can have this on me. Like
There you
whenever.
go. Yes, like we said, it can be under the clothes, skin to skin contact for really like having that connection. It can be over if you paint something on there, add some beads, any other elements you want to add to it. And then of course, this is a time now when you finish the bag to kind of think about what you want to include inside.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you to go ahead and find your medicine. So just the idea of that, finding your medicine, is just finding ways to like navigate this modern world, whatever's going on with us, so we can be balanced, like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. And looks different for different people. Some people like to run, and that balances them mentally, makes them de-stress. Some people like to do art. Some people like to talk to friends. And having things in our bags that remind us of what our medicine is, and going through this process of life and like balancing ourselves and finding our medicine, that process of finding our medicine and knowing our medicine is extremely important. And that is kind of the significance of the medicine bag. It's that we know our medicine, and we're in the process of seeking to find it. And I just want to encourage you guys all to do that. And I really enjoyed spending time with you.
Yes.
Virtually.
I know. Thank you so much. I really hope that you guys got something out of this and feel more connected to your culture, and that this is an enjoyable de-stressing activity during these really stressful, busy times. Hopefully this will be a reminder to pause and think about yourself and your well-being, because that's the greatest gift. It's just taking care of yourself and your loved ones.
Take some time for self-care.
Yeah.